Hi, everyone, and welcome to People Potential with Amanda. Thank you for listening in today. I'm your host, Amanda Flasing, and I'll be bringing on various experts to discuss empowering individuals and organizations to achieve their full potential. Thank you, Carolyn, for joining me on another episode of People Potential with Amanda. I'm so lucky to have you back with me for a second time, and this time on a really interesting topic and really up-to-date or current topic, which is Agile.
Yeah, very excited to be back here chatting with you.
Awesome. So let's jump right into it. What is an agile mindset? Many of us know what an agile methodology is. And for those of you who don't, there's our great friend Google, and we can dive into that. And there's so much research and information on agile methodology. But what we were really particularly interested in, given that at SuccessFinder we're diving into behaviors, is the agile mindset. So what is agile mindset? And why now?
So it's really something that's more and more something that traditional organizations are asking themselves about. So agile, like really quick, Google will probably explain it better than me, but it's a set of business practices and methodologies that help you respond efficiently and effectively to new business environments that are increasingly volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. It's called the VUCA for those who are familiar with it. And so agile practices came a lot from the software development industry, where it's really a way to strengthen the ability to respond to increasing disruption and VUCA realities. So many people are familiar with the practices that you can put in place that kind of bring an agile approach to how you get your work done. So, a lot of the words like working in iterations, working towards the minimum viable product, adopting a more, sprint approach, having a goal rather than just a plan. And a lot of these things are the way many teams operate, agile teams operate, and there's a lot of defined practices that go with that. And there are a lot of benefits to that, faster decision-making, quicker release of projects or deliverables as you go to get the feedback from the environment and be able to shift rapidly to the changing needs of your customers. And what we're seeing is that a lot of more traditional organizations, large corporate organizations, are seeing that they could benefit from some of these faster response times to shifts. COVID is a great example, but there's tons of other shifts in markets that are happening, much quicker, bigger disruptions, and you need to be more responsive. And many organizations are rethinking their practices to say, are we able to be as responsive as we want? And they're learning from some of these practices and trying to bring them into their environments in different areas. One of the things...
I was going to jump in and say that it's interesting that it used to be like agile as a practice came from, or is most popular for developers and tech companies, but now it's really moving towards larger enterprises, even companies that we wouldn't expect to be wanting to move towards an agile process, like banks and financial institutions, for example.
Absolutely. And not just in certain teams, it's also rethinks how you set your strategy, much more goal and objective oriented, a little less plan focused. So there's a lot of shifts that occur, even culturally, to be able to move in that direction. And one of the things that we heard the most when we did some interviews with people who work in agile transformation is there is for sure a difference between doing agile, so adopting those known agile frameworks and practices, and truly being agile. When we think of the behavioral side of things, adopting that agile mindset, to your question, that's really where SuccessFinder wanted to study this from the perspective of, the behavioral side to things. Because even if you have the practices, many organizations we spoke to said, yes, we're starting to do it, but I'm not sure we are agile yet. We're going through the motions a little bit. And that's a really exciting research opportunity for us, which is to see, okay, there's the set of practices and there's the mindset. And that's definitely a place where SuccessFinder has experience and expertise being able to study that. So our goal, the why, was, we really wanted to build an empirically validated model that could help organizations understand Agile through the behavioral lens. So, support how they can understand Agile, maybe even do a little myth busting between what you think it is or what you think it takes and what it might really take when we study the data. And maybe even help them accelerate their Agile transformation if that's something they're looking towards, or maximize or boost the way in which they're adopting Agile right now, help them be more prepared for disruption.
Awesome. So tell me a little bit more about how you did your research with all kinds of Agile experts, and what were the results that you found?
So this was first a bit of a study that we wanted to have. We learned a lot about, Agile and how it's applied. We learned about people's different perspectives for its effectiveness. And then we decided to do a bit more of an analysis with some subject matter experts. So we recruited many different experts who are leaders in Agile transformation, leaders in strategy and innovation, people who really have experience with the Agile context, but also with Agile transformation, to be able to pinpoint, how this goes really well. And what they've seen that sometimes makes it more difficult or not work as well. So we started with different interviews with these subject matter experts, and even some validation questionnaires to say, does everyone see this kind of the same way? To make sure we got a good portrait of, okay, how are they talking about the way in which this works best, the different challenges that can arise, and some of the things that really seem critical to success. And that led to a first sort of conceptual mapping of, okay, based on all of this, what are some of the areas that are key? No matter who we talk to about this, the same things keep coming up. And we arrived at 4 key themes that really were quite consistent. One of them is the notion of agility, like personal agility, which is what most of us think of when we think of Agile. It's like, I'm being Agile, or you're Agile in how you're adopting this. And we see that as Agile, when you break it down like that, it's one component though. And it's really just adapting and persevering through uncertainty. Things change. How do you respond? That's really one of the key themes that came out, is a natural, action orientation when things shift, open-mindedness, natural flexibility, just open to the unknown, risky situations where you don't know how it's going to come out. And all that uncertainty surrounding change, people who really naturally that's their area seem to come out a lot. Like, already you have to start by being naturally quite, adaptable and flexible when things are uncertain and unclear. So that's the core.
And after that core, were there any surprises in the other elements?
Well, so the other 2, I would say, are things that are important in the adoption of an Agile practice, because it's very team-based. So 2 of the themes that we came out with were very much related to a lot of the shifts we're seeing in general in team leadership, empowering teams, but also the climate within the team that works best in an Agile context. So one of them is a lot of just team focused, right? Like recognizing the team is the functional unit that will bring us to the end of our project, not the individual. A lot of the conversations we had were around, competition is the enemy of this. You want people who are open to sharing information to find the best solution possible. You don't want people who don't feel like they can really show weakness or show that they don't have an answer, because the point is that we co-create those answers. So definitely feeling like if the team wins, I win is the kind of attitude that is so critical. And something we learned in our study that was a surprise, we thought this would be more at, the team execution level. But when we talked to the different leaders, they said, no, it has to be like this at every level, all the way up to the top. Everyone has to operate this way with their teams for this to work, top to bottom, which was a little bit of a surprise. I would have expected that to be, more important at lower levels of the organization that are executing. But for success, it seems to be really important across the board. The other one is that collaboration and consultation to make the best decisions with the information available. Decision making is very collective. Everyone wants to help each other find that best solution. And part of it is through communication, which is not unheard of in most teams. You know, that's something you would say, well, all teams need to be like that, for sure, but it makes a huge impact from an agile mindset perspective in a very disrupted context where things are likely to change. It seems to be especially important. It might be a great thing to implement in any organization, but it seemed to be one of the core pillars to making this work. And the last one that is very important, and when we think of it as part of the agile practice, is the idea of prioritizing based on objectives and not plans, right? We know this from how people define agile, but as things change, priorities have to shift accordingly. You have to be so responsive. And this is where it gets a bit more, how are you thinking about your problems, the strategic side of it. So what we saw were a lot of, big picture perspective, but also a lot of creativity in how you might be able to shift, a lot of curiosity to learn from the outside and have that make you make small changes along the way to keep prioritizing and reprioritizing. And again, this is not a set of instructions. It's actually people who love that. That's their favorite way of operating. They're going to really enjoy and even thrive in a context like this. So that's what we learned from our subject matter experts. And then the second phase of our study was to really test this. So on an empirical sample, people who work in agile, lead agile teams currently, who really thrive in these environments versus people who maybe are more challenged in these environments, what do we see as coming through? And does it confirm this model that the experts and the SuccessFinder team worked on to kind of define? And what we and I'm happy to report that the pillars were all the same. It was the same kind of areas that we found, with a few things that kind of looked a little bit differently when we really drilled down in the data, but some of the things were just boosted by the data. So we had assumed that, wanting to shoulder a lot of responsibility, to have that team mindset, the idea of like, when the team wins, I win, and that's my responsibility, was important. But it was even boosted by a personal sense of accountability that came with what happened. These are people who really shoulder, like, whatever happens to this team project is really something that I want to make sure, I see it through and I see it succeed, is even stronger than we would have anticipated, which I thought was really interesting. Also, part of this too, we kept hearing the notion of humility come through as well. Humility to learn from your mistakes, humility to ask for help. And we saw that come through a lot, is not just asking for help, but offering help. People who are very service oriented. We thought it was a bit more, cooperative style, very accommodating to the group. It's actually very like service orientation. I want to help others in my team. I want to make sure they get the most out of this. And also a lot of self-acceptance too, to kind of, I want to hear feedback. I want to learn from it. I want to grow. I won't get down on myself. I'm going to stay solution focused. So a lot of those things were kind of adjustments based on what we saw, but all very much in line with this model. So we're really excited to see that we were able to predict those who seem to be rated as very much thriving in these kinds of contexts.
That is so interesting. I love the different nuances and pieces that came up in the research, and I'm sure we'll have all kinds of questions. So for any of you listening that have questions about our agile performance mindset model, just reach out to anyone at SuccessFinder. We have a wonderful team of account executives that will be happy to help you and give you a demo and show you exactly how this could work at your organization. And with that, thank you so much, Carolyn, for walking us through this, diving a little bit deeper into your findings, the findings of your team, and this incredible research that was conducted over the last several months. And that is so current to what many organizations are striving to achieve today.
Thank you so much. And our hope is really that this model can help you, improve the efficiency of what you're trying to put in place in your organization. If you're looking to be a bit more agile and is that really part of our culture? Is that how we think? Is that how we approach work? Will we just be doing agile, or will we really get to a place where we're being agile? I strongly recommend looking at it through this behavioral lens to try and get some sense of where you're starting from, the journey ahead. And I would say even in maybe putting together some of these teams, you might identify people you didn't think of because they don't typically work in the more technology-based groups. But you might also be able to find people who would make great agile leaders in your organization too. So I think it could be a great way to boost your effectiveness.
Thank you so much. So insightful as always. And to anyone else who has questions, like I said, just don't hesitate to reach out to anyone at SuccessFinder, and we'll be happy to walk you through a demo of this incredible new product that we are just launching. Thanks for joining us on this episode of People Potential with Amanda. I appreciate each and every listen and view. You can find the show notes on the SuccessFinder blog, and be sure to follow us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our newsletter for all kinds of value-added content. Until next time, stay curious.